Ip Man, the real story. Ip Man, also spelled Yip Man, was a Chinese martial artist best known for being the teacher of Bruce Lee and for popularizing Wing Chun, a form of southern Chinese kung fu. While the Ip Man movie series dramatized his life, the real story is more nuanced and less action-packed. Early life and training. Born on October 1st, 1893 in Foshan, Guangdong, China, Ip Man came from a wealthy family. He began training in Wing Chun at age 9 under Chan Hua-shun, who was already elderly. After Chan's passing, his training continued under Chan's disciple Ng Chung-sok. As a teenager, Ip moved to Hong Kong, where he trained further with Leung Beek, the son of the legendary Wing Chun master Leung Jan. Career and struggles. After returning to Foshan, Ip Man served as a police officer while quietly practicing and teaching Wing Chun. In 1937, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Japanese occupied Foshan. Unlike the movies, there's no historical evidence that he fought Japanese martial artists or generals, but he did face hardship. His wealth was stripped away, and he struggled to survive. After the war, he briefly resumed teaching, but the communist victory in 1949 forced him to flee to Hong Kong, as his background as a former Kuomintang nationalist officer made him a target. Life in Hong Kong. In 1950, at nearly 60 years old, he started teaching Wing Chun publicly in Hong Kong. Initially, he struggled to find students. Over time, his reputation grew and he taught many students, including Bruce Lee, Wang Shunliang, and Leung Ting, who would later spread Wing Chun globally. Despite his fame, Ip Man lived modestly, struggling financially due to his generosity and addiction to opium, a habit that was common among people of his era. Later years and death. Ip Man continued teaching until the late 1960s. In 1972, he filmed his Wing Chun forms for posterity as his health was failing. He passed away on December 2, 1972, from throat cancer at the age of 79. Legacy. Ip Man's legacy is immense, as his teachings influenced martial arts worldwide. His most famous student, Bruce Lee, revolutionized martial arts and cinema, indirectly bringing Wing Chun into the global spotlight. His sons, Ip Chun and Ip Ching, carried on his teachings, helping spread Wing Chun internationally. While the Ip Man movies add a lot of fiction, such as dramatic duels against Japanese and Western fighters, the real Ip Man's life was one of dedication, struggle, and passion for martial arts. Ip Man, the real story behind the legend. Ip Man, Yip Man, is one of the most influential martial artists in modern history, known for his mastery of Wing Chun and as the teacher of Bruce Lee. His life, however, was quite different from the dramatic portrayals in the Ip Man movie series. While the films depict him as a near-mythical fighter battling Japanese generals and Western boxers, the true story of Ip Man is one of perseverance, hardship, and dedication to his art. Early life and education. Ip Man was born on Tras, October 1st, 1893. In Foshan, Guangdong, China, into a wealthy and well-educated family. His family was part of the upper class, and he grew up in a privileged environment, receiving a traditional Chinese education. At the age of 9, he began studying Wing Chun under Chan Hua-shun, a respected master. However, Chan Hua-shun was already an old man at the time and passed away a few years later, leaving his senior disciple Ng Chung-sok to continue Ip Man's training. In his teenage years, Ip Man moved to Hong Kong for further education at St. Stephen's College, a prestigious school. While in Hong Kong, he met Leung Beek, the son of the legendary Wing Chun master, Leung Jan. Leung Beek refined Ip Man's skills, teaching him advanced techniques that were not widely known, significantly shaping his understanding of Wing Chun. career and the war. He returned to his job as a police officer and continued to teach Wing Chun. However, his life was again disrupted in 1949, when the Chinese Communist Party took control of China. Given his background as a nationalist police officer and his wealthy family's history, he was at risk of persecution. To escape potential political trouble, he fled to Hong Kong, leaving his wife and children behind. Ip Man in Hong Kong, teaching Wing Chun. Ip Man arrived in Hong Kong at nearly 60 years old, struggling financially and with no clear source of income. Unlike in Foshan, where he had been a respected police officer, in Hong Kong he was an unknown figure. However, in 1950 he was invited to teach Wing Chun at the Hong Kong Restaurant Workers' Union, marking the beginning of his formal teaching career. Initially, attracting students was difficult, as Wing Chun was not widely known compared to other martial arts like Shaolin Kung Fu or Hung Gar. However, over time, his reputation grew as his students began proving the effectiveness of Wing Chun in street fights and challenge matches. Some of his most famous students included Wang Shun, a fierce fighter who helped spread Wing Chun and influenced Bruce Lee. Lung Shung, Ip Man's first Hong Kong student and an early promoter of Wing Chun. Chu Xiong Tin, known for his deep understanding of Wing Chun's internal mechanics. Bruce Lee, Ip Man's most famous student, who later developed Jeet Kune Do and revolutionized martial arts worldwide. Ip Man was known for his emphasis on technique, efficiency, and practicality. He focused on Wing Chun's core principles, such as centerline control, simultaneous attack and defense, and close-range combat. His teaching style was different from many traditional kung fu masters, as he encouraged his students to test their skills in real-world situations. Despite his growing reputation, Ip Man continued to struggle financially throughout his life. He was known for his generosity, often refusing to charge students who could not afford lessons. Additionally, he suffered from an opium addiction, which was common in China at the time, and further strained his finances. Later, years and death. By the late 1960s, Wing Chun had gained significant popularity in Hong Kong, and Ip Man was widely recognized as a master of the art. However, he began to slow down due to health issues, including throat cancer. In 1972, aware that his time was limited, he recorded his Wing Chun forms on film, ensuring that future generations could study his techniques. On December 2, 1972, Ip Man passed away at the age of 79. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy was just beginning. Legacy of Ip Man. Today, Ip Man is celebrated as one of the most influential martial artists of all time. His legacy lives on through Bruce Lee's success. While Bruce Lee only trained with Ip Man for a few years before developing his own martial arts philosophy, he always credited his foundation in Wing Chun as instrumental in his development. Global spread of Wing Chun. Ip Man's students, including his sons, Ip Chun and Ip Ching, played a key role in spreading Wing Chun worldwide. Pop culture influence. The Ip Man film series, starring Donnie Yen, introduced millions to Wing Chun and transformed Ip Man into a legendary cultural figure. Although the movies take significant creative liberties, they helped bring attention to the real story of Ip Man and his contributions to martial arts. Conclusion. The real Ip Man was not a warrior battling foreign invaders, but rather a dedicated teacher who preserved and refined Wing Chun during a time of great political and social upheaval. His life was marked by struggles, financial hardship, war, and political instability, but his passion for martial arts remained unwavering. His influence continues to be felt today, shaping martial artists and inspiring generations through his teachings and legacy. The complete story of Ip Man, the man, the myth, and his legacy. Ip Man, also known as Yip Man, is one of the most revered martial artists in history, best known as the Grandmaster of Wing Chun and the teacher of Bruce Lee. His life has been dramatized in multiple films, most notably the Ip Man series starring Donnie Yen. But the real story is quite different from the fictionalized, action-packed versions. His journey was one of privilege, hardship, perseverance, and profound influence on martial arts. Unlike the legendary warrior depicted in films, Ip Man's life was more about teaching and refining Wing Chun, rather than fighting foreign occupiers or engaging in dramatic duels. Early life, a wealthy beginning. Ip Man was born on October 1, 1893, in Foshan, Guangdong Province, China, into a wealthy and respected family. His father, Ip Oidor, and mother, Ng Shui, provided him with a privileged upbringing, giving him access to one of the best traditional Chinese educations of the time. From a young age, he was deeply interested in martial arts and began studying Wing Chun at the age of 9 under Chan Hua Shun, one of the last direct students of the legendary Liu Jian. Unfortunately, Chan Hua Shun was already old when Ip Man became his student and passed away a few years later. Before his death, he assigned his top disciple, Ng Chung Sok, to continue Ip Man's training. Teenage years in Hong Kong. Refining his skills. In his teenage years, Ip Man moved to Hong Kong to study at St. Stephen's College, Da, an elite English language school that catered to wealthy Chinese families and foreigners. During this period, he had a chance encounter with Lung Bik, the son of Lung Jian, one of the greatest Wing Chun masters of his time. Lung Bik refined Ip Man's Wing Chun techniques, teaching him advanced and previously secret techniques that were not commonly passed down. Under Leung Bik's guidance, Ip Man's understanding of Wing Chun deepened significantly. He learned a more scientific, refined, and adaptable approach to the martial art, which would later influence his own teaching methods. Return to Foshan. Life as a police officer. After completing his education in Hong Kong, Ip Man returned to Foshan and took up work as a touch police officer. While serving in law enforcement, he continued to practice Wing Chun, but only taught a select few students privately, rather than running a full-time school. During this period, he became well known in Foshan's martial arts circles, but his life took a dramatic turn when war broke out. World War II and the Japanese occupation. In 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War began, and the Imperial Japanese Army invaded China, occupying large parts of the country, including Foshan. The Ip Man movies depict him as a resistance hero, taking on Japanese fighters in one-on-one duels, but there is no solid historical evidence to support this. Instead, what we do know is that the war caused severe hardship for Ip Man and his family. His family's wealth and property were confiscated, leaving him struggling to survive. He refused to work for the Japanese. Unlike some martial artists of the time who collaborated for survival, he was forced into poverty, relying on the help of friends and former students to get by. After World War II ended in 1945, and the Japanese retreated, and Ip Man tried to resume his life in Foshan. He briefly returned to his police officer job and continued practicing Wing Chun. However, in 1949, the Chinese Communist Party came to power, and the political climate changed dramatically. Fleeing to Hong Kong, a new beginning. With the communist takeover, anyone with connections to the nationalist government, Kuomintang, or wealthy backgrounds was at risk of persecution. Ip Man, being both a former nationalist police officer and from an upper-class family, was in danger. To escape potential political trouble, he fled to Hong Kong, leaving behind his wife and 2 children, whom he would never see again. Hong Kong, Ip Man faced an entirely new struggle: poverty and survival. He had no stable job and no money. He struggled to find students. Because Wing Chun was relatively unknown in Hong Kong at the time, he had to start from scratch, in a city filled with other martial arts schools. However, fate had other plans for him. Becoming a teacher, the growth of Wing Chun. In 1950, Ip Man was invited to teach Wing Chun at the Hong Kong Restaurant Workers' Union, marking the beginning of his public teaching career. At first, he'd had trouble attracting students. However, his reputation grew as some of his early disciples, including Wong Shun Leung, began proving the effectiveness of Wing Chun in challenge fights against other martial artists. Some of his most famous students included Wong Shun Leung, a fierce fighter who helped refine Wing Chun's practical applications. Leung Shung, the first and one of the most dedicated Hong Kong students. Chu Shong Tin, known for his deep understanding of internal Wing Chun principles. Bruce Lee, the most famous of Ip Man's students, who later created Jeet Kune Do and revolutionized martial arts worldwide. Ip Man's teaching style was different from many traditional kung fu masters. Instead of focusing on rigid forms, he emphasized practical application, fighting techniques that worked in real-life situations. Efficiency. Every move should serve a purpose. Adaptability. Students should learn how to fight in real scenarios, not just rehearse forms, later years, and death. Despite his growing influence, Ip Man struggled financially and for most of his life. He was too generous, often teaching students without charging them. He suffered from an opioid